on digital inclusion and ARPA. I am Kate Warren. I am the director of the Greater Cleveland American Rescue Plan Coalition. We are an advocacy coalition that is focused on using ARPA dollars, American Rescue Plan Act dollars, and other federal dollars to ensure a full and equitable recovery from the pandemic here in Greater Cleveland. There are some handouts on the table in the back and resources that describe our priority issues. But one of our priority issues and one of our focuses is broadband and technology access, which we know is a key issue that the pandemic has really shone a light on. The good news is that the federal government has recognized this issue and identified it as one of the primary potential uses of ARPA funds. And it has also provided some additional funding for communities to expand digital access, and we're going to learn about that today. What we know is that high-speed internet access should not be a luxury. It impacts everyone from school kids to job seekers to older adults who were some of the most impacted by social isolation during the height of the pandemic. Both Cuyahoga County and the City of Cleveland have been investing in solutions to increase digital access, which goes far beyond just making sure that there is an internet service that people can enroll in. And we've got some great leaders on our panel here today who can speak to this issue of digital access and what solutions are coming in our community. So I would love to introduce our speakers today. We have all the way on your right, Leon Wilson is the Chief of Digital Innovation and Chief Information Officer for the Cleveland Foundation. And in his role, Leon is a leader in Cleveland who's focused on building a stronger, more equitable, and inclusive digital community. In the middle is Tkachyk, who is the Chief Innovative and Performance Officer at Cuyahoga County. She has been leading the county's broadband efforts with a focus on increasing broadband infrastructure, providing affordable access, and doing community work to increase service adoption. And Austin Davis is a Senior Government Affairs Strategist and Assistant Director of Law at the City of Cleveland. And he has been overseeing the city's RFP process for a two-phase approach to ending the digital divide in Cleveland, which we will learn more about during the program today. So we are so glad to have the three of you here today, and we look forward to a robust discussion about how we can build digital inclusion in Cleveland. And I would love to turn it over to each of you to tell us briefly what you've been working on in your roles related to digital inclusion. So if you could just give us a little introduction, that would be great. And let's start with Leon.
Good day, everyone. Leon Wilson. And what I pretty much have been doing over the past few years in this particular area is really raising awareness. This particular issue may seem very new and novice to a lot of people, but if you take a moment and really think back, we've been hearing about this subtly for about the past 26, 27 years. Many of you may remember back when Al Gore and Bill Clinton were running for office, they were talking about the information superhighway and the information haves and have-nots. They weren't using the term digital divide. They were using information haves and have-nots. But shortly around that same time, a gentleman named Larry Irvin, actually in a report to Vice President Gore, actually coined the phrase, we may be experiencing, or we may see a digital divide if we don't tackle this information superhighway thing regarding the have and have-nots. And if you think about that time, that was the time when we were treating the internet as an entertainment option, an elective. Whether we had AOL, Prodigy, Genie, all these other kind of things, we kind of just brought it around with that one computer in the living room that everybody shared, because that's all we thought we needed. But somewhere in the late 2000s, really like around 2011, 2012, there was a shift where as the internet began to evolve beyond the World Wide Web, and we started actually doing consumer and merchants and e-commerce and things of that nature, it spilled into our daily lives. And it became more than just access to information, but how we go about doing other kind of things that we do on a daily basis. And since then, it's just accelerated. The problem is, back in the mid-90s, the federal government deregulated the telecommunication industry. to promote competition advantage. And again, thinking about, well, you only got one computer in every home, and they're just using it to fart around with AOL. And nothing's really changed. So the industry was designed from a private market standpoint to provide it as an elective, not as an essential service. But what you've been hearing since the pandemic in 2020 is that, oh, the internet needs to be regulated. We need to treat it like utility. It was never designed like that by a shared nature. So what we're grappling with right now is not that the big telecom companies are bad players and that kind of stuff. You know, they were designed a particularly unique way, but we as a society morphed. And now how do we catch up? So what we're grappling with now with the digital divide, access to affordable broadband internet, and affordable computers in every home, multiple computers, so kids can do remote learning while mom and dad are doing remote working, and grandma can be doing telehealth all simultaneously in an intergenerational home, is how do we shift that market when it's not regulated? How do we shift those demands? Because again, the telecom and cable companies are exquisitely, uniquely designed to, from an ROI standpoint and from a private market capitalism standpoint, and not designed as an essential service like water, like electricity, and like other things. That's what we're grappling with here. And it's easier said than done about tackling and addressing digital divide when it was never uniquely designed that way. And we have to look at this as a systems, as an institutional change that we have to grapple with and get caught up and right-size it.
Thanks, Leon. I appreciate that framing. Catherine, maybe you could tell us a little bit about what you've been working on and from your vantage point of the county.
Sure. So we've been doing a number of things. We right now have been starting with a priority around affordable access being one of our key things. So we partnered with the state of Ohio to do a contract with PCs for People and there's actually little postcards in the back that show all the coverage areas. We've been focusing on covering a number of our inner-ring suburbs. I think the city's going to talk a little bit about their work in the RFP process. So we focused on some of our least connected areas in the inner-ring suburbs. And so there's a solution that'll bring $15 a month internet to folks, regardless of income. That's one of the big things. So the federal government has an affordable connectivity program that provides subsidies for those that are below about 200% of the federal poverty level. But we know just because you're at 203% of the federal poverty level doesn't mean that internet access is now all of a sudden affordable to you. So we specifically looked at a solution that can provide that doesn't have an income contingent. So that will be rolling out over the next year and a half or so. And we'll be focused on a lot of outreach and adoption efforts around that. And then we also work with them around devices and still also supporting other rollouts. For example, Digital C, we have a project with them in the central neighborhood in Cleveland that helps, again, providing that affordable access to residents throughout the central neighborhood. Those that, and that's a partnership also with the Cleveland Library that also lets that coverage be actually covered at no cost for residents there as well. So we're really focused on that as a starting point, but we know digital access is not just about the internet access, it's also about digital literacy, the training that folks need. It's about getting them the right device for them. For some, that's going to be a laptop, for others it may be a computer having the assistive technology for those that may need it who are visually impaired or something like that, as well as how to make sure they have meaningful use and use it in a way that's going to keep them connected. So all of those pieces, and we are working with a lot of partners right now to come up with our strategy to cover all of those pieces.
Thank you. And Austin, maybe you could tell us a little bit about what you've been working on in the city.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Austin Davis. My title is 10 words long, but long story short, I work on policy for the mayor of Cleveland. We started, new administration January 2021, or January 2022, excuse me, trying to think through how to, what is the digital divide, what are its causes, why is it still here, who is working on it. I'll say the folks at this table here have been some of the key allies, thought partners, funders, and I think Leon, great for getting into some of the ways we work together with the rest of the panel. But we started started this administration noticing that we had $512 million from federal ARPA funds and a gigantic problem here in the city of Cleveland, the digital divide. So we did try to break it down into solvable chunks. This is our thinking. As Captain said, I think that access and literacy, or let's break it down, right? Adoption and literacy became our number one chunk to address. A lot of conversations around town, up to the federal level, figuring out best practices. Chunk two was making sure there's access to an affordable plan as we go forward. Folks can be able to afford the internet in order to have it at home. Really, you know, as a modern response to the dynamics that Leon is laying out, there's a reason why it's so expensive in this country. It's because it's deregulated. My little story is my grandmother's village in Slovakia has cheaper and higher quality internet than we do here in the city of Cleveland. That's just the truth. And then there's some longer term thinking the city's trying to get involved into. Where's the long-term infrastructure that will make Cleveland a relevant city for the 21st century, that will be able to attract high-tech businesses, that will be able to engage in, you know, the information economy, the high-tech manufacturing economy, automation, etc. Like there's so many aspects of modern living and modern economic life that require crazy fast internet and will require it, you know, 20 years from now, 50 years from now. We have this moment where we're feeling the pressure to use this one-time funding from ARPA correctly and with long-term investments in mind. And, so those are the items we thought to balance. We can get into sort of how we acted that out throughout this panel, I think.
Thank you. Leon, you sort of started us off in this direction with your remarks, but I wonder if you could sort of set the table for describing the issue, sort of thinking about where were we before the pandemic, what did we see during the pandemic, how did things change, and what are the biggest challenges in our community going forward related to increasing digital inclusion?
Great, thank you. So I laid the backdrop of the systems and infrastructural challenges from a deregulated state. What does that mean when you talk about, well, how do we get here? What's happening? Well, we never envisioned that we would require high-speed broadband internet access to perform essential daily activities. We never thought about it. So we didn't lay the pipes, lay the groundwork for that to happen. And what you're hearing is now that we're over the past 5 years, I mean, it was accelerated during the pandemic, but for like maybe the past 5 or 6 years, there's been greater attention on, okay, wow, internet costs a lot of money. And I can only get it from 1 or 2 places. And I need it for a lot of other things than just searching the internet. I need it to schedule appointments. I need it to, if I'm isolated at home and I want to do Uber Eats, I got to do it online. So we've been trying to figure out ways to find out how can we bring down the cost of affordable broadband internet. But even in that, I think as Austin mentioned, is that the consumption of the internet grows exponentially. The speeds that we needed 5 years ago versus the speeds that we needed 2 years ago versus the speeds that we need right now versus the speed that we would need in 2 more years is something that you have to factor into this when you start talking about high-speed broadband internet access and not just internet access. For too long, we thought that because everybody was walking around Cleveland with a smartphone, we were connected. There was no problem. But I can't do homework on this. I can't fill out my unemployment benefits on this, you know, with Ohio unemployment office. I can't do a lot of things with just this device. So now it goes to the other piece where you ask, how do we get here and what's going on? We never imagined that we need multiple devices to perform individual activities. A lot of people just thought, once again, with the explosion of smartphones and how we use them today, that this was good. I don't really need a computer, a clunky computer in my home. But as you realize, especially over the last 2 years, well, you gotta have it because, again, if the kids gotta sit in their living room or in their bedroom for 3 hours straight on Zoom calls, they can't do it off of this. And the data plan is just gonna get chewed up because you're on a data plan and unless you have unlimited data, which again, lower income people don't typically have, then they're gonna blow their budget. So now you got device issues, you got affordability internet issues, because at that time, cable companies and telecom companies were charging at a particular price point. And that price point was out of range for lower income residents. And when a city like Cleveland was I deem, one of the poorest cities, I mean, you can question how the numbers were added up, and is it really Cleveland, is it really Detroit, is it really Kansas City, is it really St. Louis? There's poverty, let's just say, okay, there's issues. And again, how can I afford it because it's out of reach, so it's almost like it doesn't exist. So you got all those things coupled together. Now you layer in the piece of digital literacy training. If I don't have that computer in my house, there was a documentary that Verizon did about 2 years ago. And if you think about it, kids in more affluent communities who have computers, who have laptops, who have tablets in their homes, think about the number of minutes they have access to a QWERTY keyboard. And they just sit there and type. It's like drinking water. Now you think about a kid maybe in East Cleveland, maybe on the east side of Cleveland, who only have access to a QWERTY keyboard when they're in the classroom. Now when it's time for standardized testing, now it's time for this, they're spending so much time punting and pecking that they're not focused on the question. They start sweating, they start freaking out, they start answering it wrong, and it's not because they're not smart, it's because they don't have access to that QWERTY keyboard as often. Yeah, they can thumb like ridiculous, but you can't tweet your way to an A type of thing. So when you think about digital literacy, and digital literacy is on a spectrum, because I would argue that sometimes it's unfair to say a lot of our residents aren't digitally literate. They can put up a smart TV and throw an Amazon Fire Stick without anybody's help. And they don't really know how to help using the smartphone. But when you start talking about other things in a workforce setting, using Microsoft Excel, using other kind of things, using PowerPoint, stuff like that, that's where the challenge becomes. It becomes for logging into my chart and navigating to figure out, again, when's your next doctor's appointment, or can I reschedule it, can I look up my blood work results and stuff like that, and how can I translate that? Coupled with, if you're functionally illiterate, then can you read what's on the frickin' screen? So when we say about digital literacy, it's fluid, and we have to meet people where they're at. So all those things is where we were at in 2020. And we were doing a lot of piecemeal plug-in type of things. We supported our public libraries. In Cleveland, 2/3 of all public computing, publicly accessible computers were in Cleveland Public Library. You add in Cuyahoga County Public Library, still about 2/3. When the pandemic hit and they all shut down, where did our residents go in order to log in and check on the status of things? To schedule COVID tests, to schedule vaccinations and stuff like that. Where would they go? So these are reasons why I think the education, the awareness about you need to be digitally literate for your daily activities and your daily lives beyond using a smartphone. You need the right device in your home, whether it is a smartphone, a tablet, or a computer, a laptop, desktop, you name it. If I'm 80 years old and I have bad eyesight, I might need a big fat monitor, not a small tablet. Or if I need mobility, maybe I want that tablet when I'm FaceTiming with my grandkids, because now you have a social isolation, social exclusion component of it. So all of these things is what we've been grappling with over the last two years, because while it was slowly creeping in under the radar, it was exacerbated with the pandemic. And we've been trying a lot of different things, from allowing people to check out mobile hotspots from their public libraries, computer giveaways, partnering with people like PCs for People, telling them to go to the library, it will help you out filling out your applications for unemployment benefits, digital navigators. We've kind of been piecemealing and plugging in the gaps. And while the federal government has come in with a large block of money, how you provision it out to address all these particular issues is the challenge.
It is a challenge, and I appreciate you setting the table for us like that, because I think it emphasizes how cross-cutting those challenges, and we're left with a system that really wasn't built for what we need it to do, and now we have huge need, and government is asked to come in and find fixes for this, and not only find a fix, but address a moving target. And so, you know, I think, Catherine, you might be well situated to sort of familiarize us with what the policy landscape is around this. What is the funding that's out there? What can we accomplish given the federal government's response?
Yeah, so there are a lot of funding sources that are out there. They do a lot of different things. So first, and the one you've heard us talk about is ARPA. So that broadband and making connections for broadband is a allowable use under the ARPA dollars. So that's the county, the general fund dollars made possible by ARPA, and then it's a whole thing. And then the city also is using ARPA dollars, and that's where some of our primary investments are coming from right now. But that's not it. As part of the bipartisan infrastructure law, and I'm going to try and do this without acronyms as best I can, but if I do something, somebody just, you know, say you gave an acronym, we're lost. So that actually authorized like $65 billion for across the country, and it's for a couple of different things. One is the Affordable Connectivity Program, ACP, so it started funding that. One of the things we're already talking about is how we advocate to ensure that that funding continues. Right now it's estimated to run out sometime in 2024 or early 2025. So we are already starting our sort of advocacy efforts around making sure that continues to be funded. One of the big programs, so it is the Broadband Equity and Adoption Dollars, BEAD, is what it's called, and that is money that's going to go through the states to try and, big one on that one is also the connectivity. They're really prioritizing fiber to the home as a high priority. The big thing for that, which will be a little bit difficult here for us in Cuyahoga County, is the priority has to be areas that have no service at all. The second priority has to be areas that are considered underserved, which is anybody that has less than a 120, I think, right now. So unserved is considered anybody that has less than a 25-3 connection. Underserved is anybody less than 100 megabits per second upload and 20 megabits per second download. And so for a lot of our areas, we already have those services, at least available. Now, people may not be able to afford them, but there is an option for them going to the home. So that's going to be a little bit harder for us to tap into, and we're going to have to work together on those dollars. But there is also digital equity and adoption dollars in their DEA funds, and those are dollars specifically to do things like outreach and adoption, literacy, workforce, a lot of those pieces as well, and that's about $2.75 billion, I think, as part of that overall investment. With that, there are some other grants that are available through FCC and other agencies for specific partners, such as housing authorities or libraries can also tap into certain funding streams as well. And we continue to advocate for dollars, more dollars to be used in flexible ways to meet the needs of the communities. So a lot of communities have things different, and urban communities have a much different problem than a lot of our rural communities throughout the state of Ohio even. So we want to make sure that we continue to try and get as much flexibility in those dollars to really meet the needs that we have, which can be different than what you're going to see in a lot of rural Ohio. I don't know if I missed anything. I think that's what I know.
Thank you for that. I'd love to go to Austin next. Austin, given that Catherine just laid out for us sort of all of the dollars that are out there in the policy landscape, could you talk about the city's RFP process? What are you hoping to address with digital inclusion of the city, and what do you think people can expect in terms of timeline?
Sure, yeah. Happy to get that. And I do think just to say two more words of what Catherine was saying, part of the great thing about ARPA, which is where the city's RFP is drawing its funding source, is that it's entirely flexible. We're not, only able to spend these ARPA funds on unserved or underserved areas, which are predominantly rural in Ohio. So to put words to it, the concerns that the state will be focusing more on rural areas than urban areas. Urban areas have their own concerns. But we have ARPA funds, so we're hoping at the end of the day we can really make a big difference now, even working with the state to see what we can do there. So I think in timeline, just to cut to it, was we had quarter one, we did our footing as an administration. Quarter two, we did our research, put together an RFP, released the RFP at the end of quarter two. This RFP was designed to, this is perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
I was going to do it. I love it. This is just like our strategic framework. We have a graphic designer now, so I'm trying to put her to use. I like this. It looks nice. We broke down our goals, as I was mentioning, into 2 phases. The first phase is the twin goals, portable broadband and digital adoption. So you gotta have something cheap at your home. You gotta have something. You gotta know how to use what you got. It's the plan. There's some longer-term concerns about making sure that affordable broadband can keep up with demand. Just as Leon was saying, it's one of my biggest concerns that if we make some sort of investment, it's going to be not useful in 5 years, then in 10 years, it's going to be something that you use only if you absolutely have to because you can't afford anything better. That's just that's a nightmare scenario for me. That creates a segregated internet, and that's not my goal. So that quarter two was developing this, strategy, putting out an RFP. Quarter three, we received 11 RFP responses, a couple meetings with folks, some bigger names, some smaller names, local, out of state, and some new entrants. Just really an interesting spectrum of folks who are interested in working with the city of Cleveland to tackle our digital divide. Not everybody could tackle all the needs that we've listed. I mean, we're asking for the world, and we're not exactly expecting to get the world in return, but we're going to try to push our partners to go as far as possible. So, and Leon, I should say, is also on the City of Cleveland's panel for determining which vendor we're going to be going with, or vendors, to be able to start to conquer this digital divide in the short term. We're reviewing those RFP responses now. We have a series of presentations from them, sort of like a Shark Tank style. Come on in, we'll talk to you, and not eat you alive, but like whatever. I actually have seen Shark Tank one time, so I'm not positive what happens there. We're going to talk to folks. We're going to see how far we can go, and what's real and what's not, what's on the page, and what's in people's heads. With that, there are, I'm sure Catherine can speak to this a little too. There's some complications with the law department that has very strict contracting schedules. We have a city council that has a very particular schedule it works on too. So there was always an extra delay that we didn't know about in advance. But I'm hoping to have the deployment to begin early January. That's our plan.
It's very exciting, and I would love to go back to Catherine if you could walk us through. The county is several steps ahead of where the city is, mostly because the new administration. And so if you could walk us through what the county's new initiative will look like and when things are rolling out, and kind of how organizations can get information to people they serve in the community about what's happening at the county.
Yeah, so we will have a transition administration coming up next January, so we'll be briefing people on what we're doing. But since we didn't have to go through the transition at that time, we were able to get our RFP out, as I mentioned at the start, selected PCs for people, and we're rolling that out in a series of, actually by the end of the year, we should have some of our first communities connected or upgraded. And then another group, if you look at the little postcard that I should have sent in the PDF, but I'm bad on that one. There's some communities that are rolling out probably in mid-year next year, and then some by the end of June 2024. So that's how we're rolling it out. But what we're really, and they're working on the technology and all of those pieces that come with it. And so what a lot of our focus is now, how do we make sure we get people connected and signed up to it? We do know through the pandemic, through everything, I think a lot of people had, if you build it, people will just sign up for it, and that doesn't happen, right? So we know we need to do a lot of outreach. I think a lot of folks also have a lot of mistrust just about being on the internet generally, as well as from companies, right? They've gotten signed up for various cable programs. They think they're going to pay something, and then the price changes completely when they actually get it. Or they think they've got a good product. I mean, we're hearing this, we can talk about, even with ACP, right? People are signing them up for things and using their federal subsidy and giving them devices and programs that don't work. So there's a lot of mistrust out there generally. So one of the things and what I'm excited about that we're also doing with PCs for people is we really need to focus on a lot of the trusted voices in the community. And we know that that takes some assistance, so we are actually setting up a referral program. It's not quite ready to go yet. We're hoping to roll it out soon for nonprofits. So basically, you'll be able to get a code if you have a nonprofit, and you'll be able to, if you refer people, you work with us on getting people connected through it, you'll actually be able to earn money for everybody that signs up for the impact. So it's basically going to be the first 3 months of people's payments, regardless of if they use ACP, so they don't pay anything, or they pay it directly. You'll be able to get that $45 for their first 3 months of service. And that's for kind of a thank you to the nonprofits who would spend time, with us working on this work. We know it takes a lot of effort out of the myriad of things that you're doing to try and serve the communities, and we want to make sure we try and support that in a way. So that's one of our really exciting things that we hope will help. But we're also going to have to try different things to connect to people. We're trying to, again, work with partners to say where can we bring people in and show them what it is and try and give them the full amount of information in order to help people connect. And that also goes with the digital literacy training, and that goes with the devices and all those other pieces that come into play as well.
Thank you for that. So I want to ask a question to any of the panelists who would like to respond. I'm curious, what is needed and how will the city and county respond to ensuring that these programs that are rolling out meet the needs of special populations who need digital access? We've sort of touched on a little bit of this, but thinking of folks like older adults, people with disabilities, low-income families with children, what are we doing to think about the special needs that might exist in the community and address them?
Sure. Basically, it's more about outreach and engagement, awareness, because you got to go to the people and let them know about the program, why the program, are they eligible, how would they go about, and even assisting them. We have what we call digital navigators that we fund, folks that have been trained to assist residents in any of their issues regarding digital inclusion, digital access to affordable broadband and stuff like that. These are people that are literally, walking down the streets, going to a senior housing facility, and helping that senior who doesn't have a scanner, who is still getting paper statements, when they got to upload all their applications for eligibility, actually scanning them real time with a portable scanner, and then getting that information uploaded and then assisting them with the enrollment process. So it's not just the biggest issue is it's not about referring people to, oh, here's a great program for you. It's helping them navigate to get through the enrollment process of that program. That's the end goal. That's very messy work. Or if you're trying to go into a community where they don't trust, they're not going to open the door because you're not. They're not going to answer your phone because you're calling, you're thinking it's a telemarketer. How do you get their ear? Are you going through churches? Are you going through the barbershops, salon shops? Are you going to community outreach engagement? That is messy work. That is community outreach and engagement at its core. And that costs money. You got to pay somebody to go out there. That's only volunteerism is only going to go so far. But to do that kind of outreach and engagement and knock on that one door maybe 5 times through phone calls, through email, through text messaging, and through catching them at the laundromat, is how it's going to work, so that we can get the right level of adoption that we will really make an impact. That is probably one of the biggest issues, is getting people enrolled in this program, trusting that it's not going to basically put them on some kind of monitor list by the federal government that's now monitoring how many people are in their homes. Because if you live in public housing, part of public housing is how many people live in your house. And they might be afraid that, okay, if I get on the internet and you're going to see all the feeds, all the bandwidth, that's more than 2 people. Okay, and so there's that fear factor. You got to have a trust. So trust, outreach, and engagement is one big thing. We've got a lot of great programs, but we got to let people know that they exist and then help them adopt to get on board.
Sorry.
I was going to ask, how can folks find the digital navigators if they're looking for them?
Oh man, I don't know.
Don't know the number, but again, I think it's called cleannavigators.com or .org is the website, but we'll definitely get it out. But there is a 216, it actually is a 216 number. It is a 216 number, but these are, this is a hotline that is manned by people that work at Cleveland Public Library, Cuyahoga County Public Library, the Housing Authority, some select CDCs like Esperanza, Rico's, Burkeville Carr, Metro West, as well as a handful of other nonprofits that have been properly trained about how to, what the ACD program is, where to go to get affordable devices, where to go to get quality internet, digital literacy training, and also they communicate not just among themselves, but with other navigators in other cities to hear about the stories that are being told. The gap is in, yeah, I know AT&T said this, but this is how it really works. I know Charter said this, but this is how it really works. I know T-Mobile said this, but this is how it really works. And they're using the information to help our residents navigate and make the best consumer choice for that household.
Thank you. We'll make sure to get that website out in the follow-up materials, and also the phone number is 216-749-9420. Catherine, you were going to jump in.
Yeah, so what I was going to say too, one of the things about the digital navigators funded through the Cleveland Foundation and the Digital Equity Fund, so they are provider neutral. They don't get anything, so even if you sign up for a different program, and that's a really good thing because they can help the resident find what works for them. For some folks that may be AT&T, for some folks it may be Digital C, depending on where they are. And one of the values is, and that's the message that we're trying to promote, because if you're anywhere in the county and you call them, they can help what works for you. So even if it's not in one of the areas the county's covering, or you're not in the city, and somebody hears that message, they can hopefully get connected and get to the right resources that they need. So that's a really important thing. They actually won't be in the referral program because we want to make sure that they don't get additional funding for signing people up for any specific service. Their goal is to provide the right match for the family that they're trying to help.
That's great. Do you have a question?
It's clevelandnavigators.org.
Yep.
So just for our initial audience.
Great, thank you.
I can say one thing that's on my mind with how to access communities with particular needs is I'm really excited. So Monday we're having a digital equity and inclusion manager start at City Hall. It's funded by the Cleveland Foundation, our community fund. It will be the first person at City Hall who will wake up every day and focus on broadband at all, and particularly the digital divide in Cleveland. And I think I could have opened with a couple interesting stats. The digital divide in Cleveland is so bad that when the data that we were looking at until recently had 44% of Cleveland households did not have traditional broadband at their house. That's almost half of Cleveland homes did not have broadband at home. Some just had their phones, some had nothing. It's better now, it's looking more like 35% in the city, but tragic numbers for context, Columbus is below 10%, it's like 9 something. So we're just in a different universe. There are 1,000 reasons why, each of them complicated, the intersection of 1,000 social and individual issues that have led to folks not having internet in their home. We will have a person who can find people where they're at. If they're, just like Leon said, the laundromat. That's the vision. Is there is so much work being done around town here, around the region, around the city, for individual communities, for particular demographic groups, particular neighborhoods that we can tap into. That obviously the internet intersects with. If we have a person showing up and announcing internet connectivity is a priority, and here's how it happens. So this will be one of their many responsibilities. We're putting a lot on them, but I'm really excited that as of Halloween next week, we'll have somebody thinking about these ideas and finding ways to connect with folks at the laundromat, or etc.
That is exciting.
Can I add something? I know a lot of times we talk about this as a low-income, low-to-middle income population issue, but it's actually a Cleveland issue. I have one of our senior vice presidents at the Cleveland Foundation, makes good money, lives in Glenville, and can't get good internet from AT&T or Charter because where she lives in Glenville. It's not because of how much money she makes, it's where she lives. And so, again, when we talk about this, we almost need to, in the digital navigators, the first question they ask is, where do you live? Because now they know, okay, based on where you live, here are your options. You may only have one. Here are your options over here. You may have 2 or 3. So again, it's not just a low-income issue, it's a availability issue. And then on top of that availability is a quality service. Through data that we collected, I mean, I know many of you may sign up for an internet plan and it will say up to 100 megs. That operative word up to, like up to 40 miles per gallon when you drive, but you never get it. So you're paying for something, but you're only getting maybe 20 of that 100. And then you have residents that saying, look, I gotta put more money in my tank. And if I'm not gonna get my 100, then I'm gonna move this money over here, and I'll just rely on public Wi-Fi, I'll rely on my smartphone, maybe I can get a hotspot from I got a kid in school and CNSD is gonna give them a hotspot, so they just make it work because of the economics of it all. But it's not just a lower income population issue, it is a Cleveland issue.
So if I could, so is it time?
Yeah, we're about to transition to audience questions, but we have a microphone which I think would help with, so that folks online can hear. So Alana here is gonna come with a microphone and we would love your question.
I'm kind of in the theater, so my question does project, so but I really use the microphone.
Mostly for our video recording, yeah, thank you.
Hello. Thank you all. I really appreciate the city for, actually caring enough about broadband and that type of thing and keeping the community connected. You made a great point that a lot of the neighborhoods that you live in or in these apartment complexes, they'll say if you live too far back in the apartment complex, even with broadband and 5G, all of that, they tell you, hey, this is all you're getting, and you're paying the same bill. So with what you're doing, are you going to be able to get a stronger service for those people, or will we just, like you say, have to say, hey, well, this isn't in this neighborhood, and this is all you got? Are you going to be able to with these dollars, or what does the community have to do? What can we do as a community to make it regulated so that everybody can afford and we have the same amount of service? I work in television, well, I've been in television and entertainment for a long time. So I know that even with the cable, when we had Village Television here in Ohio, in Cleveland, they moved, it was supposed to be it's a nonprofit situation, and it was supposed to be for the community, but the cables moved it so far up the spectrum that you had to have top tier cable and able to watch something that was actually for the community. And therefore they fell out of business. So what is these ARPA money gonna do for that? Is that actually gonna help us in that way?
Yeah, so I can talk about what we're planning. It's not ready yet, but maybe 2 or 3 thoughts. One is that whatever we spend money on has to affect every home in Cleveland, and ideally every business as well. There isn't a world in which we can create, I mean, it's even just at its crass level, like politics won't let us pass a bill that only provides or focuses internet for a certain chunk of the city. That's not how you work as a city. You gotta be for the whole city or it's not gonna work at all. And for everybody in that city or it's not gonna work at all. I think of, but kind of deeper than that, there's some deep solidarity between folks that don't have internet, folks that have internet, but aren't happy with it. I live in Tremont. I have exactly one provider available to me. It's too expensive. It goes out all the time. It's the same underlying market forces that have created a monopoly condition for me, prevent folks on the east side, predominantly central and et cetera, like they kind of swap up and down, from having internet at all. It's the same market failure. They're all facing the same issues. Beyond that, I think of Cleveland's history. Cleveland did not have cable TV until 1988. We were the last major city in Ohio to have cable TV. 1988 is way too late for something as basic as cable television, but the private sector skipped us over. They didn't, for whatever reason, it's a complicated story. We were unable to create a municipal provider for cable television here in the city, and we just, citizens went without. Residents went without. It's not right. So there's, whatever we do has to affect everybody, otherwise we can't create the political will to do it, and we can't justify spending money to do it. That's our intention. At the end of the day, it's going to be a lot of, on the ground, does that apartment complex, it's going to be a lot of one-off situations, right? Like a given apartment complex will have its own unique challenges and be able to hold our vendors accountable for like, why is the, you know, the angles here or the weather next to this bridge or something is preventing something from happening. So it's going to be a lot of like specific building structure accountability, and you know, we're going to have to work through it, is what I'll say. I'm expecting the most out of our vendors, and we're going to push forward.
I got one more question.
Well, the county might have, I don't know if you have to count yourself.
Go ahead. So my next question would be,
In that, like in Shaker, say for instance, okay? In Shaker now they have it where Spectrum, they offer you $60 a month for your Wi-Fi, and then they charge you an additional $5 if you want cable. Okay, most people have smart TVs now. But if you go from one room to the next room, you got different channels. You know, so if you got a TV that's plugged up in your cable, you're getting different channels and different service than you're getting if you got a smart TV. You're not getting those channels. So how does that, you know, that's affecting the community too, because if you got a smart TV and you got bad internet service, you can't even watch the news, your local news. So that's a problem as well. So I think that I'm so excited that you guys are doing something.
You know, it's on our mind too, that cable over television is obviously it's telecoms, right? Phone access too. You're on a landline to the same company. So all part of the same thought process before they go.
Hi, thanks for this. This is great stuff. A little bit different angle. So this is all these programs that y'all want to develop. We're going to need folks to do the technical side of this. So I'm curious what's being done for workforce development, and I'm really curious as far as what I'm doing is I'm trying to, in my industry, I'm trying to find pathways for young folks, especially who did not go to college, don't want to take on that debt, and want technical careers. So I'd love to know what we're looking at for that perspective as well.
I'll start. So I was actually just on another panel earlier this morning, and this woman, she down in Columbus, but they actually have it also up here in Cleveland as well, called Tech Core. And what they did was they started a program for high schoolers to train them on how to do computer repair and computer fixing. And with that now, when you talk about, so again, let's go back to the affordable utilization. And PCs for people is great, as far as where you can go get a refurbished computer at a nominal rate. And with that, but now, when, let's say you get a computer someplace else, you know, someone donates you one, you just go out and buy one. When that computer breaks, and it will, where do you go to get it fixed? Can you go to Best Buy and the Geek Squad and pay $70 for them to just take a look at it? Or can you take it to a place where they can fix it for a nominal rate? And from a workforce development now, we're training our youth on how to do computer repair, IT technical support, help desk support. You're giving them an entrance plate into the field of IT, STEM, all that sort of stuff, where they can build out. They can start their own, start their own tech support company, fixing smartphones and fixing laptops, and make good money with that. So I was like, wow, that's great. I might want to take a look at that. Because workforce, yeah, has been involved in this space. You know, people like Tourism Employment, Ohio Needs Jobs, Future Step, and Step Forward, and other places are also providing digital literacy training, computer training, because most of the meaningful wage jobs of the day require some form of computer literacy. So they are doing that as well, but again, take it down to, okay, how are we readying our youth for the jobs of tomorrow, today, and thereafter. I thought that was a very interesting program that I'm definitely going to give some serious consideration to.
And let me say, you know, I mentioned some of the federal money, and one of the things that has been very clear from the federal government is when you go to try and apply for those, like, say, DEA dollars, individual nonprofits applying aren't really going to be competitive across the country. They want full packages of application that are addressing all of these things, workforce being one, and also realize across Ohio, I mean, communities across the country are trying to do this too, so we also have to try and all figure out how to do this. You can't just assume you're going to be able to hire a company and have them bring people in, because frankly they're going to be going around the country doing that, and we also want to support and grow our workforce here. So that needs to be part of anything we do. I will say, you know, we've been working on, as some of our, the three of us up here, along with some other partners, we started a digital equity and adoption strategy document. we are now sharing it with members of the Digital Equity Coalition and folks to try and get additional feedback and make sure we're not missing anything like that. So if you aren't involved in one of those things, making sure we connect with you so that you can make sure we have that workforce component accurately put in there. And that's going to help us when we go look for also some of those federal funds. While we love the Cleveland Foundation, all the funding we do, we also want to support them by getting any outside funding that we can and bring it to the community as well. So please make sure you're connected with that and we make sure we have all those components. That's going to make us have a much stronger application package for those, and workforce is a big part of that.
Yeah, I'll just add, you're probably familiar with the workforce world, the Build Back Better proposal that did not pass through Congress had a ton of workforce elements built into it. That was really exciting for us. It's a shame to not see it go through. That said, this is the world, the broadband world is sort of the exception here, where we do have access to some federal workforce dollars, or at least there's an expectation that a workforce element will be built into our Digital Equity Act proposals. So this is the right question to ask for this group specifically. And you know, it didn't pan out for a whole bunch of other industries, but here I think there's an opportunity. So quick, got to shout out CWA. Tri-C has a great program for AT&T for training purposes. I think Cuyahoga Valley Technical School, CB something does CDCC has great programs as well. I mean, they're here in the region, and the hope is once at least we figure out what our end product will look like, then we'll be able to connect our local partners and start to build them up to create that pipeline.
Kate, we have a couple of questions in the chat.
Great.
So first off, I misspoke earlier. It's www.clevelandnavigators.org, so I apologize if I misspoke earlier. The two questions that we have in the chat. One, are you working with local agencies to help introduce these programs? That's the first question. And the second question is, are there success measures and reporting mechanisms in place to provide accountability and keep the community informed on program progress?
So yeah, I think that's where we're now trying to focus. We've got, from the county's perspective, we started our rollout of the technical side. So that's where we're now trying to connect with agencies to talk about some of the programs that we have going. The digital navigators are here to start trying to promote those, and they can connect. They have, that website has things like if you have training, if you have devices, if you know of any programs that are not on that website, going through the digital navigators to make sure you're added to that group, because again, when people call them, they share with it. Regarding success metrics, so we built some into our big contract. I mean, I just see Kate right there. So for example, our deployment for Digital State, she knows she has to report to us every month how many people they have connected, and as well as how many people have disconnected. Because again, if we start seeing a whole bunch of people connect and then a whole bunch of people drop off, we are going to know that something's not going right? So that when people don't do that. From our contract with PCs for People, they have a number of metrics. In fact, over a third of their contract is all performance-based in terms of connecting people. They actually get paid for people that get connected and must maintain connections for 6 months. So again, if somebody just signs up and they don't stay on their service, they actually don't get paid. Part of their contract doesn't get paid out to them. And we are working on a public dashboard for the county that you'll be able to see exactly how many people we have connected, exactly how many people have disconnected, where they are, not addresses, let's be very clear, just generally. That'll be summarized so we don't give anybody's personal information away. And all of that has happened so that will be in the public, where anyone will be able to go look at it at any date. It'll probably be updated on a monthly basis and see where we are on that. We're hoping to get that live by the end of the year is our goal.
You're not working on a dashboard, but you should probably. That sounds great.
And we can talk about having it on the same dashboard.
What?
So you can see the entire thing. You're going to hear from us.
Look at the synergy. It's happening. And I'll just say the performance metrics are exceptional. So that's a key. I really admire that you made those part of your contract. Makes the everyone breathe a little bit easier. Like, oh yeah, there's some stick with the carrot. So I didn't mind that. I mean, we're co-signing there.
And to get back to that first question, the digital navigators, they are the local trusted anchor agencies. So they're public libraries, both Cleveland and Cuyahoga County and East Cleveland Public Library. They're the housing authority, and they're various CDCs that are community development centers in respective communities. So they're the ones that know all these programs. And if you go into a CPL branch, you go into a Cuyahoga County government branch or East Cleveland government branch, they'll be able to share all that information for you.
Great, Lou.
Okay, Lou always have strange questions, so please bear with me. Leon, thank you for pointing out two important factors for us to be in this swamp. One is, in the past, people didn't have the foresight, couldn't foresee the future. That goes to lots of the legislations in this country, unfortunately. Now, right now, the ARPA funds, county and city both have got, actually are good for the current work, and I'm so glad that we will not only take care of the affordability using the service, we are also improving infrastructure. I think now, you all know there was a documentary made even before COVID-19 started. It was about, in our Cleveland neighborhoods, people got rid of exactly the situation you both described. You are paying for the biggest, the best package, but actually there's no fiber optical lines in your neighborhood to deliver that speed or that wideband. So the question right now is, for all the programs you rolled out, I believe you will collect lots of data. Does that really help to also solve the problem, to get rid of some of the obstacles for the future, trying to make at least local legislation as broadband as our residents' right? That means both the service and the hardware, they have to be able to comply with certain rules. So for example, then we would eliminate the situation like first 6 months, you have a promotional rate or some kind of equipment, but after that promotional period, everything pops up. You won't be able to afford. Now the other part is also on the hardware. PC for All is a really good service to help people to start, but we know technology actually changes. If you only allow people to settle with refurbished hardware, how will we be able to catch up? That would be another gap creating. When technology changes, you do need hardware improvements, which refurbished can only go so far, and you won't be able to catch the new technology in order for you to function even you are trapped at home. Due to severe weather, mobility issue, maybe another pandemic, we don't know. Especially for senior citizens, once they learn it, I believe they will use it. But the situation here is, nowadays, we want to encourage senior citizens to even utilize the telehealthcare services. If this really comes in full motion, then they will be really reliant on it, just like young people who are trying to be on the phone all the time, even just playing the game. If that's the case, we really have to find a way to have legislation help out. Do you think it's possible to do with the data you will be collecting ongoing, as an ongoing process?
I'm going to answer that question backward, first with the hardware, because you have to remember, a computer is like a toaster, it's like a refrigerator, it's like a microwave, it's like a oven. And while, yes, electricity is regulated and water is regulated, there's no mandate that you must have a stove in your house and that it must be affordable. So you can go out and buy a $5,000 stove, or you go to the B-Lot and get one that was, getting out of an apartment complex that closed down, you get a $200 stove. So that's going to be a lot harder from a hardware perspective, because no different than appliances aren't regulated except for safety purposes, fire resistance and all that kind of stuff. As far as performance and features, that is not a regulated thing. And I don't think we can put computers in that same in a different bucket where now they must be regulated, they must be affordable, all that kind of stuff. So that's that piece right there. That's an issue we're going to have to grapple with. No different than phones. Every time you get a brand new phone, it's now $1,000. It's now $1,200.
So you are saying our senior citizen or the kids with a fixed low income or fixed income, they won't be able to upgrade their equipment in order to catch up with the technology?
I'm saying that I don't think you're gonna be able to look at some form of regulatory practice in order to ensure that seniors and our capable kids. Now, if school districts want to adopt one-to-one programs like CNSD did, then the onus is now on the school to make sure that kid has optimal equipment to perform their duties. If the senior facility or assisted living facility wants to make sure that's on the onus is now on the business, not on the government to ensure mandate that happens. They may say, we want you to have something in there, but they may not mandate, well, it's got to be less than 2 years old, it's got to have this much rent, it's got to have all that. I think that's a lofty aspirational goal that may not be achieved. As far as data collection, yeah, the county and the city will be collecting data to help inform where should they be targeting additional resources and stuff like that. But when you look at the federal level, the only two data elements that they track is how many households have paid internet subscriptions or paid broadband subscriptions, not getting on, not subsidized, paid. Are you paying for an internet plan? And also, do you have a computer in your home? They don't ask how many, it's ask, do you have a computer in your home? And do you have paid for it? That's the only thing that they're tracking. And then that's how they report on, are we at least connected city or not? So what the county and city are trying to do is saying, how can we get more residents to be on some kind of a paid broadband plan? And it's affordable.
Yeah, and I will say the thing about data is, and all of this, and the stories that we hear from folks too, they do make a difference. You and Leon can say too, when we started this, even at the pandemic, the number of people who were just like, oh, I mean, don't worry, there's a business solution out there, there's a private sector solution that's just going to step in and say, but this is not a big deal. I just need to make a couple phone calls, right, to the right people. And we said, okay, go ahead, be my guest. If that works, we are more than happy to support it. And then they came back, they're like, turns out that's not going to work. So we need to talk about other solutions to this, right? So, and that is part of what the stories, the data that we have, and what we've been able to share with folks, and really seeing, and the folks that heard about kids in the library parking lot trying to go to school during the pandemic, right? The fact that older adults couldn't connect with their family at nursing homes, they had no ability to connect because nobody could come see them. Those are all powerful things that help us tell the story that we were saying before the pandemic. It really tuned in, and I think there's a lot of people listening. So the data that we collect and the stories that we share are very important to help us try and make changes also at the federal and state level that can help us support the programs that we need to do to make sure we can solve the digital divide.
That was the reason why I asked that question. Is that possible we can push at least local legislation, make that something more like a broadband as a residence right, that type of situation?
That is a really fun idea for me. I'll just say the city doesn't have there's nobody I'd put in charge of the city of something like that. We really have to lean on community partners to make that happen.
But we know non-profit organizations, even they're helpful, their fundings are not always stable. So what kind of help can they get?
I'll just say, I think we're building towards that better world. We're taking our first couple steps, and I think these are.
Yeah,
I think we're wrapping up. Yeah.
The last thing I'll say is that, like I said, it took 25 years, 27 years to get into this hole, and we're not going to get out of it in 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that there are more questions in the audience, and maybe our panelists will be generous with their time and stick around for a few moments, but we are past time, so I want to be respectful of that. I really appreciate those of you who came out in person today, and thanks to those who are watching online and engaging online. Thank you to Austin and Catherine and Leon. Thank you also to the Benjamin Rose Institute for hosting us. Orion Bell is their CEO, he's in the audience today. I do want to point out the resources on the back table. One of those is that we are, the Greater Cleveland American Rescue Plan Coalition is providing grants. These are $5,000, up to $5,000 advocacy grants if your organization is interested in advocacy. The flyer has some more information on that. I encourage you to take one, and you can ask me if you have any questions. Enjoy some cookies, stick around, ask your questions to our panelists. Let's give them a big round of applause. Thank you.